Everyone. Today's session would be a very interesting one. The topic for the webinar today is affordable and green buildings in Kenya, making both possible. I would start off with a very quick presentation, and then we would delve into our panel discussion. Closing the gap on the supply of green affordable homes is a challenge that we believe that we can overcome through the public and private sectors working together. We see it as an opportunity that benefits governments, it benefits developers, it benefits the financial institutions, and even the home buyers. According to IFC's projections, we see green buildings in Sub-Saharan Africa to be at least an 800 billion investment opportunity through 2030. Today, we have a few green buildings in Africa with a significant need for green affordable homes. We believe, we at IFC believe that green and affordable are not trade-offs. Both are possible. What we really need is a way to put homes onto a greener path with solutions that are sensible to the African context. At IFC, we are here to help with the solutions that create markets and help uplift people out of poverty. We've done a lot of work through the EDGE program, and it's been able to illustrate that affordable and affordable housing can actually be green. Well, this webinar would kind of bring together the leading voices in the built environment industry here in Kenya to share their experiences working in the affordable housing sector. And then it will also discuss how it has been possible to incorporate green and sustainability measures in their housing sectors. So we see buildings to account for at least 28% of greenhouse gas emissions in emerging markets. According to the IPCC special reports, by 2030, all new buildings must be zero carbon. By 2050, all existing buildings must be zero carbon. The building sector kind of provides the biggest opportunity for us to address all the issues that are regarding climate change. It's projected that by 2060, the developed floor area in emerging economies is going to double. And this gives us an opportunity to ensure that buildings are built right, so that we don't lock in the high efficiencies. And this is possible to be done just by making very little changes in the way that we build. Now, at IFC, we have a green building program, which is a systematic approach to sustainable buildings. It's a four-part strategy that includes working with banks, investing directly into the building sector, advising governments on green building codes and incentives, and then the last part being the EDGE certification. Now, let's start with a very clear definition of what a green building is. International green building definition agree that a building must first of all obtain a local or international standard of green building certification, and this should be verified by a third independent party. So it is not enough for one to self-declare that their building has met a standard. It has to be certified by a repeatable certification system. Secondly, the building needs to be at least 20% more energy efficient compared to a comparable baseline in the local market. And then in order to satisfy green finance requirements, the project must have a quantified impact reporting. So it should be reporting on either individual basis or on a portfolio basis. You should be able to report on the energy saved, the water saved, or the reduced GHG emissions in the project. So once the building meets the above criteria, 100% of it can be counted as green financing. So at IFC, we've been able to achieve a lot. First of all, let's look at the EDGE program. It's basically a free software. It's an achievable standard, and there's a verified green label. You're able to use the software to design your project to be green. You're able to understand exactly what qualifies as green. And then once you're able to meet that standard, you're able to get the verified green label. And then you're also able to see at a click of a button what the impact on your project is doing. On the right-hand side of this slide, you can see what the success has been so far. There's been a lot of uptick in green building certifications globally. At the moment, we've certified more than 50 million square meters of floor area across the globe. And as you can see from the slide here, in South Africa is where we've had a lot of success. However, you'd realize that we do have a lot of other certifications coming up in other places around the world. At the moment, 89 countries have at least one project that has been certified. We've done, when it comes to housing, we've certified about 360,000 housing units, and this is from 2015 to date. And you can see on the right that although EDGE started with emerging economies, now we getting certification even from the developed countries. They are also using EDGE as a standard for their projects. Now, how can we move and then create a big impact in the markets that we work in? I'll showcase this case study from Colombia, where we were able to move the market from 0% green buildings to at least 20% green buildings within 4 years. And it happened mainly because of the collaboration between the private sector and the government. In 2015, the first green building code was launched in Colombia. And a year after, IFC worked with Bank Colombia, which is a financial institution, a bank in Colombia, to issue the first green bond. This green bond was used to support projects that were going green. The bank also introduced a green mortgage product, which was able to allow people that wanted to purchase these projects to have lower interest rate in accessing them. The government also came up with some more incentives. There were incentives on how, for projects that were going green, incentives to developers who had been able to successfully implement green in there. And IFC's EDGE program also worked with these developers to create the awareness, build the capacity of professionals within the country, ensure that developers understood why they needed to build green. Financial institutions were also able to implement their green building program. And with that, we've been able to get a lot of projects in there certified green. And the interesting thing is, 60% of housing that has been certified green in Colombia are actually projects that fall under affordable housing definitions. So we believe that it can be done, and it's very possible to replicate this also in Kenya. I'll end my presentation here, and then we would go into our panel discussion. So basically, I would allow everybody to introduce himself, and then we can start. So maybe we'll start with Jason. If you can introduce yourself, and then Kenneth can also introduce himself.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis. My name is Jason Horsey. I'm the Executive Director of Unity Homes. We are one sec, sorry, Dennis. Yeah, so we're a residential real estate company based in Tartu City. We currently have just over 2,500 homes under projects at the moment between Tartu City and through a sister company of ours in Nigeria. What sort of differentiates us from our competition is that we are vertically integrated. So we've got all of the key functions in-house, so design, development, construction, sales and marketing in-house. So this enables us to obviously have much more accurate control of our cost structure, as well as align that value chain much more efficiently to ultimately focus on what is very, very important to us, which is delivering high quality homes to our clients.
Great. So we'll hand over to Kenneth.
Good afternoon. My name is Kenneth. I'm the Managing Director of Centum Real Estate. We are a real estate development and investment company with operations in Kenya and Uganda. We own substantial land bank, and we have say 2,600 residential units under construction.
Okay, great. We can move on to Kiewamba.
Thank you. Thanks, Dennis. Afternoon. My name is Kiewamba. I'm one of the MDs of IHS, that is International Housing Solutions. We are basically a fund manager that basically focuses only on green affordable housing. We've been on the continent for a couple of years, over 10, 12 years. We have been very fortunate to date that we've done about 30,000 units that are spread across Southern Africa, Namibia, and South Africa. We are relatively new to the Kenyan market, and we are basically rolling out a green affordable housing development across different sites. Out of the 30,000 we've done, just over about 10,000 have been certified by EDGE, and we have been one of the leading users of EDGE on the continent. We are very fortunate and to have done that, and even in Kenya, we have already begun incorporating EDGE in all of our designs. So in Kenya, we are fully dedicated to developing using the EDGE. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Kay. So we can move on to Habib.
Yes, hello everybody. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. So thanks for the invitation, Dennis. Looking forward to the conversation. I took over as the CEO of Shelter Afrique in January, based here in Nairobi. So very looking forward to the discussion, and we have already some great partnership with IFC EDGE that I know very well. Been championing EDGE in my prior role at IFC as head of housing finance for Africa and the Middle East, and subsequently head of Asia Pacific for IFC. So I know the value of EDGE, and really looking forward to the discussion and see how we can push the agenda of green climate resilience.
Okay, thank you, Habib. So David, if you can also introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, Dennis, for the invitation. My name is David Mathu. I'm a quantity surveyor and currently serving as the Managing Director and the CEO of National Housing Corporation. National Housing Corporation is a government agency established under an act of Parliament. That is Cap 117 as the principal agency of the government in as far as implementation of government policies and programs on housing are concerned. We have been around for the last 70 years, and this year we'll be celebrating our 70th birthday. We focus mainly on outright sale of houses. We have houses where we have a model we call TPS, tenant purchase scheme, which is a very popular product for the corporation, given that, of course, a lot of investors are not looking at recouping the investment over a long time. But being, of course, a government agency, we are able to be patient enough with the Kenyans and recoup some of our investment over a long period of time. We are also focused on rental housing units, and we have a program where we are currently working with IFC towards developing several rental units across the country. We are also manufacturers of what we call the ABMT products. Specifically here, I'm talking to the EPS panels, where our Mavoko factory is perhaps the largest in East and Central Africa, and which we are trying to actually revamp with a view to support the government agenda on affordable housing. The whole issue of sustainability and greening our technologies in construction is something we are focusing on. And our new strategic plan, which commences in 2023, running all the way to 2028, has highly emphasized the role of sustainability in our designs. And it's something you're going to see as we move into the future. We have had very good partnerships so far with IFC, and we have our staff, of course, sensitized on matters edge. And this is something we are looking at onboarding as we move again into the future. Thank you again, Dennis, for the invitation.
Okay, thank you, David. So I actually wanted to start off with you, and I see you've already given me some answers to what I was going to ask you about for my first question. So I just want to follow up on that. You already mentioned that sustainability issues play a very key role in your strategy. Now, what steps have you, has NHC taken so far to operationalize the strategy? And has there been any setbacks? And if there has been, how have these setbacks been handled?
Yeah, thank you so much, Dennis. I must be honest that it's now going forward that we would like to green most of the units that we are producing for the local market. Obviously, being a Kenyan government agency, for now, our market is Kenya. And once we agreed that there's a need for us now to onboard sustainability as a core concept in our overall corporate sustainability pillar, we have started engagements with various players, and especially with IFC Edge. And as you may know, Dennis, of course, I have had my team getting trained. And this is a multidisciplinary team. We have had our engineers, our architects. We have some of our, fund managers, all of them being trained at IFC. And I think so far I have sensitized over 60 of my staff, slightly over 60 of my staff in that regard. Number two, our designs. And here I want to talk to a design that we are aiming at, erecting several houses at Konza City. And as we know that Konza is a green city. It's actually a technology and a green city for Kenya. And NHC has been given a chance where we are the sole anchor at the moment of the housing segment of the city. We are looking forward to developing housing units from July, which have which are bringing on board the concepts of sustainability. And therefore, we've been able to bring on board, landscape architects. That's a component that was lacking within the corporation. So far in our new organizational structure, we have onboarded landscape architects. We've been able to onboard, a green certified experts to be part of guiding the designs that we are erecting at Konza City. We are relooking into how we normally document our projects so that the issues of water management, the issues of the kind of materials that we are using for our new project, especially at Konza, are actually aligned to sustainability aspects. The strategy I spoke to is yet to be launched, actually is a draft strategy. And I want to assure you, and of course, the rest of my colleagues who are on the call, that the new board of the corporation, together, of course, with the management, we are very keen on to ensuring that the units we'll be producing are actually helping to preserve the energy, and again, also all the other aspects related to sustainability. So yes, that's something we are keen on, and we are going to look at that as we move forward. But I must admit that in the past, that has not been a very key consideration when it came to developments within the corporation.
Okay, great. So moving on to Habib. You recently took over the leadership for Shelter Africa. Are you able to share with us your vision? Shelter Africa's vision on affordable housing provision in Kenya. And maybe you can touch on what it is for the continent as well, since Shelter Africa covers not only Kenya, but then the entire continent. Is sustainability a feature in this vision for affordable housing?
No, thank you. Thank you very much, Dennis, for that question. So as you rightly mentioned, we recently joined Shelter Africa in January. So since then, we have been working tirelessly to put in place a 5-year strategy, which has been actually approved by our board, and we're moving forward to our AGM next week, actually in Abuja, and I hope I'll see many of you in Nigeria next week. And our strategy is basically focusing on really sustainability, climate resilience, job creation, and impact, right? Because at the end of the day, when you talk about housing and affordable housing, large-scale housing development, you're talking about the whole value chain. So we are looking at housing from a value chain perspective. It's not just about the four walls, right? Housing creates jobs, okay? The construction materials industry can be developed through it. Contractors, land management, and then financial institutions from a demand mortgage financing perspective, capital markets development, mortgage-backed securities, REITs, and you name it. And then working with governments to really develop the whole sector. So I think across the whole value chain, there are great opportunities to really develop different markets, right? So it's not just about the housing, it's also about the impact around the full ecosystem. So in our strategy, we have 4 pillars that we are focusing on now. So the 4 pillars are first, financial institution. Look, I can share a screen with you if you don't mind, Dennis.
Yes, that's
perhaps.
fine. Please do.
Okay, that would be, it would speak more to what I'm trying to say. So let's try this one. There you go. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, just going on slideshow. Okay, is it more visible now?
Yeah, very clear.
Okay. I have many slides, but I think this slide would speak more to our strategy going forward. So we have a 5-year strategy focusing on 4 pillars or 4 product lines. So we have the demand side, we call it financial institution group. Across all these products, we'll be offering to FIs, right? So we'll be working with FIs to help them get access to long-term funding for mortgage finance, microfinance institutions, trade finance in the housing value chain. As I said, we have a value chain approach. It's not just about building homes, it's about everything that goes into it. So trade finance is key, especially for some of the landlocked countries like Rwanda, Central African Republic. These countries depend a lot on the neighbors, right, to get access to construction materials. So we need to develop trade in the space. And actually, interestingly, a couple of weeks ago, we were in Washington at the World Bank IMF spring meetings, and we met the head of the head of the World Trade Organization, WTO. Susan Gozi was very, very welcoming to work with us on that, right? Leveraging the Africa Free Trade Zone, et cetera, et cetera. And then SMEs in the housing value chain, housing funds, mortgage refinance companies. We are invested in many of those in Tanzania, TMRC, KMRC, Kenya, CRH in West Africa that also recently raised $270 million working with USDFC. So, really we are addressing the demand side from that pillar perspective, right? And the second pillar is project finance group. So on the supply side, right? So we are addressing, project finance, developer finance, last mile infrastructure, student accommodation, urban regeneration. These are key to many of our cities, and alternative building technologies that would be very relevant for what we're talking about here for climate resilience. And then the third one is PPP, working with governments, government agencies like NHC. We're in conversations with NHC. I know about the Kwanzaa City projects, and this will be one great place where we can also have some partnership and discuss further. In Togo and other countries, we're also having those PPP conversations where government will provide land, and then we'll come financing with some developers. We're talking to some Indian developers who have been very successful doing urban regeneration. in India. So we bringing them along to partner with us. And finally, this is where really, the topic of today is very relevant. You can see our fourth pillar is FMG, which stands for Fund Management Group, right? So there, on top of it, you can see clearly green for us is the priority, right? So it's really about sustainability, right? And then we'll have different themes. So as I said, green was one of them, gender is another one, access to housing for women and women in the housing construction value chain. And I have an interesting story there, and I think I shared with you, Dennis, when we were in Zimbabwe a couple of months ago. When I just started, I joined, we had a mission in Zimbabwe to meet the government, and then we met the private sector, on the side of those meetings. And we met this group of young ladies that owned a construction company, and they reached out to us basically to share how much our last AGM in Zimbabwe was so beneficial to them, because we had a partnership with Danish IFC Edge team to sort of showcase how IFC Edge could be helpful to them. So these ladies were actually trained during that program, and they came out of it very, very excited about using this. So they've been since then traveling across Africa to learn more about concrete projects. They went to Cote d'Ivoire to see one of the projects on their own. So they were just telling us how impactful our AGM was, thanks to that conversation we had on the IFC Edge. So again, I think this is something that we can replicate. So we're trying to push women in construction, women in the housing value chain, through SMEs and trade finance as well, basic infrastructure for housing and Islamic finance, right? So these are the 5 priorities. Obviously, we have a couple of more that we're working on from a fund management thematic areas. It's going to be, housing for migrants and IDPs, internally displaced people. So we are discussing with the UN and African Union on addressing this in some of these countries. So this is basically how our strategy looks, but definitely green is a big agenda for us. Capital markets, we are also very much involved there. Acorn, which issued the first green bond in 2019, was actually initially funded by Shelter Afrique when Acorn started its operations a few years ago. So Shelter Afrique seeded that financing to Acorn. Access Bank PLC as well, the first climate green bond certified in Africa. So we see really the green and sustainability as a major component of our strategy going forward. And we are actually setting up these dedicated funds that would go after investors interested for green impact, to really have the investments done in the space and make all our investments green. So all our supply, all our financing will target to become green certified. So that's why we have this great partner with IFC Edge. So let me just pause there. Thanks.
Great. That's very interesting. I'll come back to you later on the green bonds, but let me ask Jason, because Jason, you actually certified one of your projects in Tartu City using Edge. Can you tell us a bit more about this project, what your development model really is, and how you are able to keep your project to meet sustainability and affordability standards?
Okay, yes, we've done 2 projects. One is Unity East, which is a 2, 3, and 4 bedroom project. There's 640 units, about the 2 bedrooms, about 76 square meters each. We're about a third of the way through, and sales have been incredibly strong on that. So we've sold over 50% of the project, and we expect to complete the project sort of middle of next year. Unity 1, which we've also certified, is 1,200 units split into 2 projects of 600 each. These are 1 bedroom units. These ones are going for a cash price of about $37,000 We should be handing over the first sets of apartments towards the end of this year. But again, sales has also been incredibly strong on that. We sold maybe 200 units. And as I say, we're quite early on in the project. In terms of our model, as I said, we're vertically integrated. So what this means is we've got a lot of the key functions of the value chain in-house that is ordinarily external to a developer. What this means, we've got much better control of our cost structure. So ordinarily a housing developer is beholden to, design engineers, structural engineers, QSs. And I think if you speak to most developers, they'll tell you the contractor is the bane of their existence. We are our own contractor. We are our own designer. We are everything in-house. So that means we've got a much tighter control of our cost structure. And it's much, instead of being beholden to a contractor, which we all came from a contracting background, and contractors are really difficult to deal with. You've got lots of variations, you've got lots of claims. We basically strip all of that out, and we retain that basically as profit in the development. What this also means is we're able to align that value chain much more efficiently and really focus on what is very important to us. And health, safety, and environment are something that is incredibly important to us as a business. So just to give you an example, about a year ago, we wanted to get a new HSE manager, very senior group HSE manager. So we did an international recruitment drive. We got a recruitment company. We looked all over the world. And eventually we found someone, he's actually a Kenyan guy, but he was working for Halliburton in the Middle East in a very, very senior HSE role. I'm sure most people are familiar with Halliburton, but just in case, they're an extremely large oil and gas company. And despite the sort of stigma around oil and gas, the HSE standards of oil and gas companies are incredibly high. So we're essentially now implementing oil and gas type HSE standards into the building sites. And I don't believe you'll find many or even any other housing developers in this market who've got that same level of attention to health, to HSE. It is extremely important to us. Another thing is how we're able to do the cost is you guys have put together a very, very reasonable program. And I think there's somewhat of a misconception in the market as to being green, being prohibitively expensive, and perhaps being too onerous. But our experience with you and your team, Dennis, has been a very pleasant experience. It's something that doesn't cost too much money. You've got to take proactive steps to achieve it, but it's not too difficult at all. And I would obviously highly recommend every developer does it. And we will certainly make sure that all of our developments henceforth are EDGE certified. Okay,
great stuff, Jason. So moving on to Kenneth, who is also another developer. So Kenneth, you head Centum. How are you also embedding sustainability in your strategy? And if you can also let us know, is there an added cost in ensuring that your project meets sustainability requirements?
Thank you, Dennis. We, as you are well aware, IFC is currently certifying one of our very popular project, Mzizi project, where we're developing 300 units that are all fully sold. But we've taken a deliberate step as a Centum Real Estate to see where we could have the highest impact on sustainability. And as data shows that real estate industry contributes 40% of global greenhouse emissions, 28% during operational emission, and 11% is generated from materials and construction. So we'd want to participate in the 11%, reduce that, but also make sure that as these houses are being operational, we reduce the impact on the 28%. So the specific activities that we are doing is our projects across Kenya and Uganda, which are now 2,000 residential units, will all be EDGE certified, which enhances our sustainability. But also we've looked at some of the benefits from tenants who have come into our homes. They are prepared to pay the premium, especially the expatriates, for the unit. where you promise that the operational cost will be reduced, homeowners have no problem paying a premium for that, knowing that in the long term, the cost of operating the unit will be cheaper. I also believe, and this we wait to see, that we'll have healthier communities down the line as we continue with these developments. And possibly lastly, there are two other things we've done. Just to highlight, this last weekend, we planted over 6,000 trees in 2 rivers. We expanded our solar installations. Now we are in excess of 1.5 megawatts across our development, which we are focusing on sustainability in a big way across all the disciplines.
Great. Thanks, Kenneth. Kerry, I mean, you are, I don't know how to call IHS. You are not developers, sort of, but then you work closely with developers and you sort of invest in affordable housing. You were very successful in South Africa. Now you're in Kenya, and we know green certification is actually a key component of the work that you do. So, can you just tell us how IHS is able to get its entire portfolio of affordable housing projects to meet the EDGE certification standard?
Thanks, Dennis. I think firstly, just to clarify, we are a fund manager, and our delivery model is we either outsource developers to deliver for us, or we ourselves develop. So we basically have different delivery models. Just going to your question regarding how do we do that certification process, I think we struggled initially, especially when in South Africa, trying to find our feet. I think together with IFC, it was a new product. How do you basically bring it on board? I think in Kenya, what we have done is that we basically have gone out in the market to try and define what is an affordable housing, for example, 2-bedroom. What does it look like? What facilities does it have? What do we want to put in it? And after we basically did out some market work, we basically were able to finalize the designs. We were then able to basically look at the base case design standards in Kenya. And at that time, actually, the EDGE standards were being developed. Basically EDGed our standard unit. We incorporated EDGE. We looked at various interventions, and all of them had good cost implications to try and make sure that we are as efficient and as cost efficient as possible. And we were able to finish that exercise where we designed, we EDGed, we then EDGed the specifications, and then we basically priced it. And that was basically the process upon which we have now been able to do the EDGE certifications at the design stage. And we have actually have projects that have actually complied with the EDGE version 3.0. And post-construction, towards the end of the construction, we will be doing an audit to basically verify that what has been designed has basically been implemented. So that is basically the process we have been following and will be following.
Great. Just following up on that, does this certification requirement make your projects unreasonably expensive, such that your target clients are not able to access them? And if you can just let us know a little bit of the incremental cost for this affordable housing project. I know IHS has done some sort of work on analyzing some of your projects in South Africa. It would be great to bring this to bear.
Yeah, no, I think I would echo some of the words that Jason has shared. And I think prior to my understanding of EDGE, I thought it was expensive. And I think the general market perception, not just in Kenya, but I think globally, is that if you're making a building green, it's going to be expensive. So when you come and say that you want to do an affordable greenhouse, then people are scratching their heads wondering, how will it be affordable if you basically adopt green standards? And as you have put in one of your slides, that there are various green certification standards across the world. And we basically looked at all of them, all of the major ones, and we felt that the EDGE was the most practical to use, and especially from a cost perspective, and also from returns of the savings you were able to receive was actually made a lot of sense to us. So, I mean, we struggled initially, I think, trying to incorporate edge. And again, as you very well know, there are various interventions and each has a cost implication. And it's not that it's expensive, more expensive, or the thought that somebody is thinking that for the building to become green, you need to bring in some gadgets, you know, to basically monitor, and those gadgets are expensive to try and manage it. I mean, there are interventions that by just increasing the window to wall ratio, as simple as that, and you find that you can be able to achieve significant savings from that. So if you look at numbers wise, I think initially when we worked on it, it was even coming to over 7.5% to 10% incremental cost. But the target we have seen is, I would say, basically around the 3.5% mark. And I think one of the things that people need to realize is that over time, technology has improved, manufacturing has improved, supply chain dynamics have improved. And so you find that the typical, for example, solar panels or the solar PVs that were there, 7-10 years ago, today you find that, they are much lighter, they are more efficient, and they are significantly cheaper. So that has been a very big plus for us, that you find that from the technology side, the costing of some of these technologies has actually come down. So my personal view is that if you're doing it to scale, like Jason and our friends Jason at Unity, you find that at scale, these costs can significantly come down over time to a point where that it will not necessarily be a marked price increase even in the unit, and that's what we have basically seen across our projects in different countries.
Great. So now coming back to you, Habib, on the issue of financing, what are the available options for financing affordable housing in Kenya and then even on the African continent? What have you seen? Does getting the projects to be green really play a role in assessing some of the funding opportunities that are available?
Yeah, look, I think you do have financing opportunities across the full value chain, right? Starting from, I would say, the construction materials production process, right? All the way to developing the land, right? You do have specific funding that can go to do that. And then doing the supply, right? Development of houses themselves. And then, the mortgage finance side of things for the demand, and the capital markets side of that, doing mortgage-backed securities, REITs, real estate investment trust, all the way, right? So I think financing opportunities are across the value chain, and depending on what you are doing in the value chain, you have different sources of funding. And usually, we always limit ourselves to just like the brick and mortar, right? We're talking about like, the four walls, and we don't look at the full value chain. And that's what we're changing here at Shelter Afrique. As I said, our new strategy is really value chain driven. And if you look at the 4 pillars I just shared with you, right? The last one for us is the future, is the fund management group, right? It's really to scale up affordable housing across the continent in large scale, right? Just to repeat myself. So to do that, you have to sort of set up dedicated fund structures, right? You can have several thematic in the same fund, but you can have different you can have also one thematic per fund, depending on how big it can be. But definitely green for us would be a great source of funding. So, the topic of this discussion is around, can affordable housing also be green? If you ask me, I would tell you, actually, green can make housing affordable. Okay, how do you do that? Basically, as I said, the source of funding is key in many of our markets across the continent. Funding, right, is a big challenge because it's expensive. Okay, you go to Nigeria today, the local market, the local currency funding rate is around 30%. We're talking to some of the banks, they're lending to the developers at 30% in local currency. Okay, so if you can find a way to source funding at a much cheaper rate, and the way you can do that, you have multi-trillion dollars of impact financing that is sitting out there just waiting for green projects. And housing is the best place to deploy that capital, right? Housing is the best way to really get green and have the biggest impact in terms of climate objectives that all these countries have. So this is exactly what we're doing. So we're setting up these fund structures and going after impact investors that are interested in those kind of impacts, and we'll see the results, you know. So I think at the end of the day, for me, green would help get concessional funding, cheaper sort of funding, impact-driven sort of funding, and then bring that to developers, bring that to financial institutions, right? And then through capital markets, where you can even, you know, mobilize those international funds that are interested in such investments of green, and get a lower, you know, a lower interest rate, lower cost of funding. So that's our strategy. That's what we're doing. I mean, we're traveling around the world to discuss with different partners and see how we can do that, including IFC, by the way, and the World Bank.
Great. Yeah. So, Kiri, with IHS, you have been able to attract some sort of financing for your projects because of your commitment to EDGE. Can you just walk us through that? Was it easy to access these funds, or it was very difficult?
I think initially it was difficult, but just as Habib has alluded, you are finding that there's more green money out there today. The whole issue of greening tends to be like a magnet. I think there are also quite a few institutions that are actually sitting on green funding, but haven't found the funds that are green to deploy to. So that is, I think, a big gap. And allow me, please, just to mention one other thing regarding, again, what Habib has just mentioned. We have been collecting a lot of data regarding the units that we rent out, and we have a very large rental portfolio of a couple thousand units. And we actually monitor the energy use, the water use from the tenants we have. We also monitor even the pricing of these utilities. And one of the interesting statistics that we basically have now is that people who are living in some of our units, most of our units, by virtue of the fact that they are using less energy, they are using less water, they are able to save the equivalent of 1 month's rent in a year, just from those savings.
That's interesting.
And so what that means, just as Habib has alluded, is that the greening has actually made the unit even more affordable. And I think one of the things about affordable housing is not just the fact that the price of the house has been discounted, that the rental has been discounted, but by virtue of the fact that even the usage is actually also cheaper, then it makes it much, much more affordable, rather than looking at the headline price. If I'm living in a house that is cheaper to maintain, and yet you are able to have all these facilities, then that is a very, very big benefit that even people in the middle class are not experiencing. And I think those are some of the things that we are eager to bring to this market, because the more affordable we make these units, the more beneficial this will be to our population.
Yeah, that's great to hear, because sometimes we assume that when it comes to affordability, it's just the initial price point, but then we are going to be living in these units for a very long time. Yes. How can we ensure that the cost of maintenance is not too much? Okay, just following up on that, I want to come back to Habib. Regarding green bonds, we see it to be another interesting area. Your initial presentation, you touched on how Acorn was able to tap into that. Is Shelter Africa also looking at a similar option in your affordable housing strategy?
Absolutely. So for us, look, as I said, there are trillions and trillions of impact investors waiting for pipeline for them to disburse their money, right? And this is where I would also love to maybe preach here, right, to the audience on this line, because I think we have few developers and specialized fund managers like IHS that also kind of a developer. We need the pipeline. We need to develop pipeline of green housing. Okay, so funding would not be an issue. I mean, Shelter Afrique is planning to issue green bonds as well. Last year, we did our Nigerian local currency bond issuance. We have a program of 250 billion nairas to be issued over 3 years. We did the first tranche last year, 46 billion nairas, about $110 million. I mean, nothing stops us from really making these, the MTN program we have, to make it green. Okay, so the issuances that we'll be making the next few months or years could be also targeting green sort of projects, right? And we can even issue more with all those investors that are interested in green. And we're not going to tap only local markets, but we'll be tapping international markets as well. But for us, it's key to develop the pipeline, because we're not going to go and issue bonds and sit on the proceeds, right, if we don't have enough supply. And that's what I've seen in my old life, even at IFC, Dennis. You know, we've been really struggling to generate those pipelines where we put money. I mean, I remember we even had some concessional funding, right, available for green projects, but you have hard time deploying that capital because the supply is not there. I mean, the pipeline of projects to be financed. So I think it's key that the team here really work hard to develop those pipelines. Okay.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that's very true. There's always been the arguments about whether the pipeline should be there before the funding or the funding comes before the pipeline. But yeah, I mean, both parties need to work together, because if the green projects are not there, then how would the financing go for them? So yeah, it's a very great point that you've made there. Coming back to you, Kenneth, I mean, with Centum deciding to now build green, do you think this is a trend for the future? And basically, what was your motivation to ensure that your projects now are built green?
Yes, I think that's the trend for the future, simply because the providers of capital will start demanding that you have green projects. So you will fundraise cost effectively if your projects are meeting that sustainability criteria. We've also seen the end users, the homeowners and even tenants demanding parts that sustainability is a key component, and maybe you provide your energy savings. So we are future-proofing the business. And I think if we look forward to like 2027, 2030, having a sustainable building will be sort of compulsory because that is where the world is headed to.
Great. And I would pose the same question to Jason, since you're also a developer. Can you let us know what your motivation is for going green, and do you also think is a trend for the future?
I mean, I agree with everything Ken has said. I guess, first of all, I think it's the right thing to do. As I said, climate change is very real. We're feeling the very tangible effects of climate change now. And as I said earlier, it's actually something which is very achievable. So I think it is the right thing to do for a start. It's absolutely the trend. You've heard Habib, Kenneth, Kioi talk about green financing. There's obviously Acorn, as Habib has already touched on. There's more and more people talking about green bonds. If you look at the deeper capital markets like the US and Europe, we've got more and more ESG funds who are only mandated to invest along ESG related lines. That's only going to get bigger and bigger and more prevalent. So for us, certainly, it's a case of getting ready. We're not fundraising at the moment, but getting us into a situation whereby in the future, when we're ready to fundraise, we have all our ducks in a row and we're able to tap into that capital. I genuinely think, I don't think Kenneth sort of alluded to it, in the future, you will not be able to raise capital unless you have some sort of green credentials. The other thing is, you know, like there's a great narrative being formed in Kenya. Like I saw Meg Whitman, she was in the US the other day talking about investing in Kenya because it's a diversifier and it's also good for your green credentials, because our grid is, you know, largely 90% green energy.
Yeah.
We're fortunate enough to have geothermal, so we've got green baseload. So there's a great narrative forming around Kenya. You know, we've got a green grid, and then if you can get mass adoption in the housing sector to for EDGE certified buildings, you can imagine tapping into a huge pool of capital in the future.
Great, great. So coming back to you, David, I mean, in your position as the MD for NHC, what do you think are the main barriers for greening affordable housing in Kenya, and how can we overcome them?
Thank you, Dennis, for that question. I think one of the greatest challenge that we face as a sector, housing, number one is the capacity when it comes to matters sustainability. You notice majority of our construction professionals, be they architects, engineers, quantity surveyors, and the rest, they go through their training in a very nice way, and they are taught how to design very fascinating designs, how to cost them, how to provide the mechanical, electrical services integrity when it comes to structural engineers. But then the component on sustainability is not emphasized. And I can say that for sure, because throughout my years in college at the university, really this is actually not one of the issues that were highly emphasized throughout my program. So I believe it's a high time we also try to deepen the capacity all the way from enriching the academic programs and syllabuses that touches on all the players who eventually ends up finding themselves in the housing sector, where we need to adopt green technologies, and the whole issue of climate change is highly considered. Number two, of course, is the policies. We don't have really strong policies that entrenches the concept on sustainability. So I believe it's a high time, of course, as government, because where I sit, for example, I'm supposed to take policy directions, say from my state department or from the larger government, and implement that, mainstream that in all the projects that I'm undertaking. But then the question would be, is there really a policy direction to the corporation, for example, on why we should, and as a matter of fact, why we should really be pursuing sustainability as one of our strategy in housing investments? So again, that also, I find it as a major challenge. Of course, there's a whole notion that, you know, implementing sustainability aspects in housing is a bit costly vis-a-vis traditional ways of putting up houses. And I believe this is a good area of research. I know previously when I've been part of the sensitization at IFC, at your offices at World Bank, IFC EDGE, I know you have very nice scenarios which actually demonstrate that going sustainable way, by way of either using EDGE as a certification, you know, process or any other certification tool is not necessarily expensive. But then there's that perception in nature that generally that becomes costly. And I think then that's an issue that again, those who are proponents, they have to deal with. But let me say, as a corporation, we are working hard. One, we are government, and therefore we should give a signal to the other players in the market that that is actually the way to go. And I believe when sustainability aspects are promoted by government, when government is the one driving green housing, then we also encourage the other players in this sector, the housing sector, to also onboard such aspects. Because of course, where government puts in confidence, then it's much easier for the private sector to also follow and to deepen this whole issue that we are discussing of sustainability. So going into the future, again, as I said, in one of our key pillars, we have 5 pillars in the proposed strategic plan for the corporation, 2023 all the way to 2028. Corporate sustainability is one of the critical pillars. And within it, then the whole issue of sustainability, green certification of our affordable housing programs is highly emphasized. And I want to assure everyone on this call that going forward, of course, as a leader in this segment of housing, we are going to greatly deepen and entrench the whole concept on sustainability. Thanks, Dennis.
Great. And I do echo in some of the points. I mean, the points that you made. I mean, capacity building is very, very necessary, and it's one of the main reasons why the EDGE program is doing a lot of trainings and workshops with the various stakeholders and all that, because we need to get the capacity to really understand how going green can work. And policy is very, very key. Policy is very key. I see Habib's hand is up. Habib, do you want to say something?
Yeah, no, look, I think, I'm sure you like the interactivity of this whole conversation, because what David is just talking about is key, right? I think NHC, National Housing Corporation, really should be at the core of everything we're talking about, right? Ready to do this massively across Kenya. And they can be the drivers of the policies, working with the Ministry of Housing, right? And we are happy to wade into the conversation, because Kenya is a shareholder, actually the largest shareholder at Shelter Africa. We have 45 other countries, and we're happy to drive this conversation on the policy standpoint, on how we can, actually make the whole sustainability conversation at the level of building codes, right? Because in many countries, all these countries have building codes. And if you remember, Dennis, we tried to do this in Senegal, actually, right? In the Senegal housing project, we actually went all the way up to the building codes level to entrench the qualifications of greening at that level, right? So that at the end of the day, any project that happens in the country, fitting the building codes, respecting the building codes, which is mandatory, it drives all the projects in the country. So it makes really the work much easier instead of going project by project, right? So I think, David, you're on the right track there, but let's see how we can all, put our hands together to make that happen. And I'm sure Dennis would be happy to support that process.
Exactly. We'll be very happy to be on board. Yeah. Okay.
And welcome the support. Thanks.
Great. Thanks. And Justin, so coming back to you again, I mean, listening to some of the barriers that David has mentioned, how can we get developers and then the public in general to realize that green and affordability is not mutually exclusive? It's possible to have the same in a project.
First of all, keep doing what you're doing. I think there's certainly much more awareness around the EDGE program now. There's certainly a lot more developers who are EDGE certified. So I think you're getting the word out that it is something that is, as I said earlier, you're trying to break down that misconception that it is prohibitively expensive. So you guys are obviously doing a very good job. As Habib and David said, I think working with government, if we can get something put into the policy there, that'd be great. The other thing, and I don't know whether this is even remotely feasible, but is something through incentives. If there could be some incentives for EDGE certified houses, again, that ties in very nicely with this narrative of Kenya. It's green grid, these green housing developers, becomes a great global story. And I don't know if that's something just feasible. I don't know if that's something that you guys are looking at, but it was certainly, incentives rule the world. As Charlie Munger said, show me the incentives, I'll show you the outcome. If you can get incentives put into the system here, I think you'll get mass adoption through all the housing developers.
Yeah, and I remember there was that incentive of the free land for projects that were going green on the affordable housing program a couple of years back. But then I really don't know how that went, whether some developers were able to really access that incentive.
Because there's certainly one case which the KRA is not helping with, and there's a tax break for solar panels in Kenya. have an immersion heater, which you use maybe 1 or 2 days a year, you lose you have to pay import duty on it. So like I know there's a big case pending now whereby developers have brought in solar panels and they brought them in with no import duty, and the KRA is now retrospectively trying to get import duty for them. Stuff like that just, it doesn't tie into this narrative that we're talking about. And I really hope that sort of, particularly in that case, we've got a very, very small liability there, but some people have got a very big liability. I hope common sense prevails there.
Yeah, great. Okay, Kenneth, so what support would developers like yourself also need to ensure that incorporating sustainability measures in your housing project also becomes a norm?
So in addition to what has been spoken about, training across board from the manufacturer side through to the users. And then the other thing is a quick one that government can do is if they can give or waive off the approval fee for the green buildings, and also fast track the NEMA approval process, then you'll find a bulk of developers taking up that option. Those are the only additions I would make.
Yeah, and that's very interesting. So in Ghana, one of the cities decided that for projects that were going green, the cost for building permits was going to be reduced by 30%, and then also it will be fast-tracked by 50%. I mean, so it means that you would get your building permits earlier than if it wasn't green, right? So these are some of the very simple incentives that sometimes we discuss with the cities that we meet. Yeah, so I would want to leave it up here and then open it up for questions from the from the audience. So Mary, if you can put up any questions that has come up. Okay, so actually there is a question from David. So, from David Ross, one of the attendees, and he's basically asking the panelists, anybody can answer this, what he's asking, what type of messaging has worked well for youth in convincing end buyers and renters that edge and resource efficiency is the way to go. And so maybe Kyoyi, you may want to speak on this, because I do remember that you guys actually market your projects as being, if you buy from us, you're going to save 1 month's rent, right? So that's I think it would be very interesting to.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to get a question, but I think also from a marketing perspective, as we had mentioned earlier, one of the things, again, it may sound repetitious, but I think it's quite key for us, is that affordability is not just about the rent or the purchase price. It has got to do a lot with, are you living in a place where there's affordable schooling? Are you living in a place where the shops are affordable, whether it's for clothes, whether it's for food? Are the amenities and facilities in that area affordable, whether it is medical stuff like that? And then I think what is also very important is the transport from my house to my economic source affordable. And that is very key, because even if you give somebody a very cheap house that is 100 kilometers from where he actually works and earns his living, then it doesn't become affordable, because he can't pay more on transport than basically on the rent. So when we look at our projects, that in a sense is the criteria we use for site selection. And then we overlap it now with the whole issue regarding the green housing that we are bringing, that is more sustainable, that will basically stay longer. And these facilities that we have, basically the maintenance costs are much cheaper. Those are some of the messages that we are basically sending out with regards to the housing communities that we actually design right now.
Yeah, and also to add to that, if you are building for me an affordable house, and at the end of the day, I have to use more than 40% of my disposable income to pay for utility bills, then I mean, I'm not sure you are giving me an affordable house. So yeah, that's actually, and I think it also answers the second question, asking about how we are defining affordability in the sense. There was a follow-up question from David Ross asking about how we can quantify the end user cost savings and the payback. So, I mean, to answer this directly, we are able to use the Edge software to really get a very clear understanding of what the savings are. The software allows you to choose the most efficient cost savings that you can use. I mean, the most efficient ways to get your project to be green, right? So then you're able to see in real lifetime savings on what your utility costs would be after implementing certain measures. And the software is free. You can always access it from from the Edge Buildings website and then use that. There are a couple more questions. So there's a question here saying, can adaptation needs be embedded into the Edge design template? Basically for Edge, it's looking at just the building, right? So looking at how the building can be made green and all that. We do have, I mean, IFC has another tool called the BRI, Building Resilience Index, which basically looks at how certain risk in building or in projects can be seen as early as possible, and then financiers can make a decision on how they can really adapt on that. So that's also another tool that is available. Just going through some of the questions again. How do we make green building a norm across board? Current efforts are more focused on middle and high income people. How about low income households that build for themselves? Is any of the panelists, willing to take up this question? So Jacob is asking how we can make green building a norm across the board, mainly because current efforts are more focused on middle and high end income people. What about the low-income household that build for themselves?
I think that is one of the things that we are working on. And by virtue of the fact that we have actually done it and we've invested in providing green housing, especially within the affordable housing segment, we are proving that it can be done and it is possible to do. And the cost is not as prohibitive as people have often thought about. And we've done it before, and we're planning on doing it in Kenya even this year.
Okay, great. Any other from Jason and Kenneth?
I think this was what Habib was alluding to. I think working with government to try and put this into policy. And as I said, if we, assuming that the low income is still the formal sector, for me, it's incentives. I think incentives that are actually achievable and that, people can get, because I don't know what you said earlier, Dennis. I don't know whether any developers have actually got any of those incentives yet. So I think if you could push more incentives through the system, I think you could get, as I said, you get much bigger mass adoption through the housing developers right down the income spectrum.
Okay, great. So there's another question, Eleni, asking if there are EDGE certified projects in Tanzania. At the moment, there isn't any EDGE certified project, although there are about 5 projects that have been registered and it's in the process of being certified. So very soon you'd have a certified project. However, I know there are other green projects in Tanzania. Projects that have been certified using the green mark from Singapore. So there are definitely, green projects that are in Tanzania. But then, yes, within this year, some of the projects that have been registered in Tanzania would be certified, and you can really use that as a case study. For those in Kenya that are looking for examples of green certified projects or green housing projects to have a look at, we, in collaboration with EAPI, we are organizing a tour for 3 projects in Kenya that have been certified. So you would, if you're able to register, if you can reach out to EAPI and then register, you can have the opportunity to see what really goes into a green project and what it means when we say a project is green. Okay, there is another question from Hassan. He says, I would like to know the ease of accessibility to materials, itemized and software. Can we use similar alternatives? Would that be recognized and certified? So I would just try and answer this question, then pass it over to, any of the panelists who want to answer. So basically what has been done is, well, the software has been aligned to the local baseline. It's looking at the materials that are also available locally. So you are able to choose from the various materials that are in there. And what it does is any material that you choose, you're able to see exactly what its impact on your energy and then impact on your greenhouse gas savings is going to be. So it allows you to make a decision, especially at the design stage. You're able to make a decision as to what type of material you want to go with. And then most importantly, you're also able to see the incremental cost. Obviously, some type of materials may be more expensive than others. So you're able to see that and then make a full decision. If I should go to, let me go to Jason and then Q. You have already certified a project, and Kenneth is also in the process of certifying their first project at Centum. Have you had any issues with regards to material selection in your decision to go green?
No, so there's been no issues on material selection. The only difficulty I guess we're having at the moment would be on the low flow taps. We've got to have low flow taps, despite we've got deliberate very low water pressure here. So you put a low flow tap onto a very deliberate water pressure system and you don't get any water at all. Our flow rate without using low flow taps is 4 liters a minute. And I know we need to be below 8 liters a minute. So that's quite literally the only thing we've had difficulty with on the EDGE certification, is trying to get around that, because our pressure is much lower, our flow rate is much lower than it needs to be, but you have to have low flow taps to get the EDGE certification. So other than that, we've had no issues. Obviously, even we're building with concrete, and that was obviously a concern for us. Material selection has not been an issue.
Okay, good. Kenneth, you want to come in?
Yes, but I think Jason has covered. We are the documentation stage. On the selection of materials, we've not had any challenges. I wait to see what the engineers and architects and your expert agree upon.
Okay, that's fine. Kay, I think you had your camera on.
Yes, I did. And I think this one, I'll even throw the question back at you. I think for us, one of the challenges we have had, I think, is on the hot water. And I think Dennis, we have discussed this with you. I think primarily it's the whole issue of getting an efficient hot water system that is energy efficient and not expensive. We will look at the various options. Actually, Dennis, you can speak more about it. And I think this is also one of the examples of how flexible and understandable the IFC team that is working on the EDGE has been, because we've actually reached out to them and told them this isn't working or it's not providing the savings that we require. And we've shared suggestions back and forth. And that, I think that interactive and iterative process has been very helpful. I don't know, maybe Dennis, you'd like to speak on it a bit.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we spoke at length about the various options, and in the end, we accepted that yes, instant hot showers can be used based on the rating for them, the data that's accessible to us. And I want to say, you guys did a good job of bringing it to our attention, and it's all the main reason why we did the software. It's not give and take, as in like do as it is. We want to make the software as relevant as possible, and if the people that are using it on the ground are not seeing that, then it becomes a problem. So we take a lot of feedback And we always appreciate the feedback that we get from the teams that is using it. I remember even for Shelter Africa also has certified one of their projects at the design stage, and we had a lot of back and forth with the team to really guide them and help them in getting things done the right way. Right. Yeah. So we would encourage everyone on this webinar. Once you start using the software, we would be very happy to get your feedback so we can incorporate it in the next updates. Okay, so I see there isn't any other question. I would give the opportunity for all our panelists to give their parting shots, and then we can wrap up. So maybe we'll start from David. In 1 minute or less, what would you want to say? Yeah.
What I would like to say first is to most sincerely thank you, Dennis, together with your co-organizers of this afternoon's call. We are grateful as a corporation to have participated in this discourse. Sincerely appreciated listening to my colleagues who are way ahead of us, but also to indicate the government willingness, at least from the point of the National Housing Corporation, to be a leader for this very important discourse on sustainability and mainstreaming of the same on matters housing. As I said, we have a good strategy. We are launching it later in the year from July. And I invite key players to partner with us, because in the strategy, we have identified the various players who are going to greatly support us as stakeholders towards realization of this great vision of housing the nation. In particular, I would like to use this platform to invite any institution that may be willing to partner with us in the development of what we are calling the Housing Resource Center for the country, which is a critical pillar of our new strategic plan and also our new human resource instruments. In our new human resource instruments, aspects of sustainability have been onboarded, and therefore we have created a structure that is very supportive to that strategy that we want to implement, because you cannot be saying we have a strategy without then forming the relevant structure that will onboard the relevant capacities and individuals with capability to actually drive this agenda. So we believe the two, the new human resource instruments, together with the new strategic plan, will go hand in hand towards helping the corporation realize this agenda. And for that reason, showcasing the government of Kenya as a leader in this important discourse. So I invite anyone willing to support us in matters research, in matters resources, and formulation of this important center or institute to partner with the corporation, and we'll be very grateful. For that, thank you very much also to our listeners. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Habib?
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Dennis. Just to say quickly to David that we would be very happy to support you and your team to do this. I have maybe at least one of my colleagues on the line, and we'll be following up with you. We know NHC well, and we'll be happy to support. We do have a knowledge center ourselves, so we'd be happy to share a lot of the information and data that we have to help support you in your center as well. Look, Dennis, thanks a lot. Thanks for doing this. And I think this is a great panel, and it's a great opportunity to really discuss how to really, belong to the new world, right? This is the new world. This is where we're going. There's no going back, right? So it's not like we have an option here. The same way back in the days, we moved from fixed phone lines to cell phones, right? In many African countries or locations did not know they never got access to landlines, right? They only went straight to the cell phone. So the leapfrogging process, right? We need to just accept it. And I think that's the way to develop, that's the way to go. We're not going to spend the same, we're not going to go through the same stages of developments as the West and developed countries. We just have to leapfrog. And I think this topic here, green, sustainability, housing, we just have to leapfrog, right? I mean, our homes, our developments need to be green and sustainable, okay? So we don't have to build homes and then go into retrofitting. And that's one thing we didn't talk about here. There's a great opportunity for retrofitting as well, right, for green. I think that could be another conversation.
Yeah.
But going forward, really, we need to leapfrog. We need to go think about greening everything that we're doing, and we are on that boat. And we're happy to support any institution and work with the full value chain to do this. I mean, we have a membership of 45 African countries, and we're growing, and we really looking to entrench, right, the sustainability and green agenda at the policy levels of our country members, right, including Kenya here, and will be supporting the different countries to do that, so that it's easier for developers and all the players in the value chain to just implement this. So we're looking forward to be those to be that enabler in collaboration with IFC Edge, obviously, Dennis and the team. But again, thanks again, and looking forward to further conversations and action on the ground.
Thank you, Habib. Kenneth?
Thank you, Dennis, and thank you, the panelists and attendees. I think this is one of the many platforms that we'll put together to help educate the public and developers and all the participants in the real estate value chain to then appreciate where the world is moving and the opportunities. I've also realized, listening to the panelists, there is a shortfall of a healthy green pipeline, which means it's an opportunity for us to put together a pipeline that can raise funding at scale. So I look forward to attending many more forums like this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Jason?
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Dennis. As I said, HSE for us is absolutely paramount. It's the #1 core value. So for us to be able to go through the EDGE certifications, be able to achieve the EDGE certification in a reasonably seamless manner is something that we're extremely thankful for. And as I said, we'll always green all of our projects henceforth. And I would strongly advocate for all developers to do the same.
And then Kiri?
Open access. Open access is an initiative that we are involved in, and we have partnered with FSD, the UK organization, with Real, the French guys, and with CAF, the Center of Affordable Financing in Africa. And basically what it's saying is this, is that, as we've said, there's so much that needs to be done. No single person can do it. Information is key. And if we all are to succeed, we need to be able to share the information that we have with others so that they in turn can be able to successfully accomplish these same goals. So we have signed up to open access, and a lot of our learnings, our mistakes, our challenges, our successes, we have basically shared that information a lot into the market so that the market itself can be able to things. We have been even working with our contractors, our other partners, is just the whole issue of making information accessible. Because as we are saying, the pipeline is very small, and scaling up any business, and especially this one, is significantly difficult. Not many have done it, and hats off to Jason and their team and what they've done. But Jason himself will tell you it has been a challenging journey, and for us to get on, to develop a good pipeline, we need to create scale. And this needs to be done collaboratively with others in the market. So I would encourage us all to basically be a part of this initiative. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And I mean, on my side, one of the key things that I saw coming from this webinar was the fact that greening the units actually makes them affordable. So it means that, yes, you can have projects that are green and still are affordable. However, we need to really work on the barriers. And one key area is on capacity building. IFC would do their best to ensure that a lot more people are trained for them to understand what really means. What really we mean when we talk about green and how you can go about it. Policy direction is also very key, and we are happy that NET it's here. So, we can work together on what sort of policies or incentives that we can be able to put out there. And then when it comes to the misperception and the misconception, it's all about awareness. We have to do a lot more of these webinars and then trainings to get people to really understand that you can go green by doing A, B, C, D, and it doesn't always have to be the XYZ. There are different options to go green, and it's possible to go green and then make it affordable. Thank you everyone who was able to join, and we are so grateful to our panelists. They've been able to give us a great deal of insights, and I've been able to address the issues very well. If anyone has any further questions, we will be very happy to take them. You can always send it to our partners, the EAPI, API events, and we would get it. Right. Thank you, and have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Thank you.